The moment the hot coffee splashed across the young woman's trembling hands, the entire glass-walled office seemed to freeze. The bitter aroma filled the air, mingling with the sound of hurried footsteps and the sharp intake of breath that followed. In that instant, Andrew Walker, one of Seattle's most feared corporate executives, had no idea that this careless act would unravel everything he believed about power, success, and himself. What began as a moment of irritation would soon become a turning point that would expose a hidden truth, one capable of reshaping countless lives, including his own. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to change destinies, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Andrew Walker had built his reputation on discipline, speed, and unrelenting expectations. At 38, he was already a senior operations director at one of the largest tech logistics firms in the United States. His office tower overlooked the rain-soaked streets of downtown Seattle, a city he barely noticed as he rushed from one meeting to the next. To Andrew, life was a series of targets to be hit, numbers to be achieved, and people to be managed. Mistakes were unacceptable, delays intolerable, and weakness invisible. He thrived on pressure, believing it forged excellence. Yet somewhere along the way, ambition had hollowed him out, leaving little room for empathy. On that gray morning, deadlines piled high, and a crucial presentation loomed. Andrew stormed through the open-plan office, eyes fixed on his phone, reviewing financial projections. That was when he collided with Abigail Brooks, a 22-year-old intern on her first week. The paper cup he carried tipped forward, sending scalding coffee cascading down her sleeves and pooling at her feet. The impact was sudden and painful, but worse was the humiliation. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. The silence was suffocating. Abigail stood frozen, shock written across her face. Her clothes soaked, her hands trembling. She tried to apologize, even though the accident wasn't her fault. Andrew barely noticed her distress. Frustration boiled over as he barked sharp words, dismissing her presence and storming past without a backward glance. To him, she was another minor obstacle in a day full of them. But for Abigail, that moment cut deeper than the heat of the coffee. She had fought tirelessly for this opportunity. Raised in foster care after losing her parents at a young age, she had learned resilience early. Nights spent in overcrowded shelters, days balancing school with part-time jobs, and years of uncertainty had shaped her into someone quietly determined. This internship was her lifeline, her chance to break free from a cycle of instability. Standing there, drenched and humiliated, she felt that fragile hope waver. She cleaned herself up in the restroom, her reflection revealing red eyes and clenched resolve. Instead of leaving, she returned to her desk. She had promised herself that no matter how hard things became, she would endure. The office buzz resumed, yet the sting of Andrew's indifference lingered. Days passed, but the memory of that incident stayed with her. Still, Abigail worked relentlessly. She arrived early, left late, and absorbed every task with care. Her notebooks filled with meticulous observations, and her suggestions, though rarely acknowledged, quietly improved workflows. Some coworkers began to notice her diligence, but Andrew remained distant, consumed by quarterly goals and board expectations. Meanwhile, a major corporate audit loomed, one that would determine the future direction of the company. Unbeknownst to Andrew, the firm's founder and majority shareholder, Jonathan Brooks, was planning an unannounced visit. Few knew that Jonathan had a daughter. Fewer still knew her story. Years earlier, after a tragic accident claimed his wife, Jonathan had spiraled into grief, pushing everyone away, including his young child. Guilt and fear convinced him she would be better off without him, and he arranged for her to be placed in care, planning to return for her once he rebuilt himself. But life moved forward, and time slipped by. He searched for her for years, finally locating her only months before. Wanting to understand the woman she had become, he arranged for her internship under a different last name, determined to observe quietly before revealing himself. On the morning of the audit, tension gripped the building. Executives rehearsed their presentations, assistants rushed through corridors, and Andrew felt the weight of responsibility pressing harder than ever. As he paced through the office, his eyes caught sight of Abigail reviewing spreadsheets. Something about her calm focus unsettled him. He almost dismissed it, but curiosity tugged faintly. The boardroom filled with anticipation as Jonathan Brooks entered. His presence commanded immediate respect. The room hushed as he took his seat, scanning faces with quiet intensity. Andrew began his presentation, confident and precise, but midway through, Jonathan raised a hand, requesting a closer look at the data analysis. His gaze shifted toward Abigail. When she was invited to explain her findings, she stepped forward, nerves fluttering but voice steady. Her explanation was thorough, insightful, and remarkably strategic. She identified inefficiencies no one else had noticed and proposed solutions that could save millions annually. The room listened in stunned silence. Jonathan's eyes glistened as recognition dawned. The small gestures, the careful phrasing, the familiar resilience mirrored his own. Though he kept his composure, his heart pounded. This was his daughter. The meeting ended with unprecedented praise for the intern's work. Andrew stood stunned. For the first time, he truly saw Abigail, not as an inconvenience, but as an individual of extraordinary potential. When Jonathan requested a private meeting, Andrew assumed it was to discuss corporate strategy. Instead, the truth emerged. Jonathan revealed Abigail's identity, her journey, and the reason for her presence. The weight of the revelation struck Andrew like a physical blow. Shame flooded him as he recalled the morning he had dismissed her pain. His chest tightened with regret. That afternoon, Andrew watched Abigail from his office window, rain streaking down the glass. For years, he had equated strength with authority and success with dominance. Yet this young woman, who had endured loss, abandonment, and hardship, carried a quiet strength far greater than his own. In the days that followed, changes rippled through the company. Policies shifted to emphasize mentorship, inclusion, and support. Intern programs expanded, mental health resources improved, and leadership training took on a new tone. Andrew spearheaded these changes, driven by a need to atone. He began to mentor Abigail personally, not from a position of authority, but with genuine humility. He listened to her experiences, her dreams, and her fears. Each conversation chipped away at the walls he had built around himself. Slowly, compassion replaced arrogance, and purpose replaced ambition. Abigail, in turn, found confidence blooming. The workplace no longer felt like hostile territory but a landscape of possibility. Her relationship with her father, once lost, began to heal, forming a fragile yet hopeful bond. She learned that forgiveness did not erase pain, but it allowed space for growth. Months later, at a company-wide conference, Andrew stood before hundreds of employees, sharing a story he had once been too proud to admit. He spoke of failure, of misplaced priorities, and of the transformative power of empathy. His words resonated deeply, sparking reflection across the room. Near the end of this journey, if this story has touched your heart, reminded you of the power of kindness, or inspired you to treat others with greater compassion, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps these messages reach those who may need them most. And before this story ends, we have one special request for you. Please leave a comment sharing a moment when kindness or forgiveness changed your life. Your story might inspire someone else who is struggling right now. On a quiet evening as the sun dipped below Seattle's skyline, Andrew and Abigail stood by the window, watching the city glow. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a calm stillness. In that silence, there was understanding, healing, and hope. A single careless act had uncovered a profound truth, that beneath every role, every title, and every assumption, there beats a heart longing to be seen. And sometimes, it takes one painful moment to awaken a lifetime of compassion.